The Pro Velo Super League is giving one male and one female a shot at the big time. For the winner of the under-23 categories, it is the men who get a stint as a stagiaire with the Jacob Ulula team. For the winner of the women's competition, they get a 12-month contract the following season with the Live Ulula Development Squad. It is a new pathway to the highest level of world cycling. One cyclist who's there, she was a top 10 finisher at the World Championships this year. She's also been the Australian National Road Champion. She's won the Criterium title as well. I'm Matt Keenan, and I'm looking forward to this chat with Ruby Roseman-Gannon. Ruby, welcome to the Road to the World Tour. I'm looking forward to hearing your story on how you managed to get to where you are. But let's start with where you're at the moment. What a year it has been for you in 2024. What was the highlight?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I think probably a few highlights, but I'd say winning nationals would have to be the highlight. It was, a long-term goal, and it was pretty cool to finish it off in Buninyong for the last time for a while. So, yeah.
What's it like fronting up to every road race that you ride and looking down and seeing the gold sleeves and the green and gold bands around your chest?
Yeah, it's definitely special. I felt a bit of pressure on myself to I guess do it justice, and in not only the way I raced, but also how I was as a person. But then, coming back to Australia, it's hard to rock up at a club crit without everyone sort of looking at you. So yeah, it's also a little bit, you can't really go into incognito mode in it.
There's no under the radar when you're wearing the national champions colours, particularly if you turn up on a Wednesday night at Q. There's no sneaking through, Ruby, in that scenario. How about the World Championships this year in Zurich? Did you start that race as one of the workers more so than a protected rider?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the course and the kind of riders that were targeting it, I was more than happy to be in a full support role because that's what I thought I could give to the team most. But then the way it panned out, I did what I could for the team, and we sort of had four leaders, and then Tiff and I were in more support roles. But it was a pretty attritional race with the freezing cold temperatures, and then I found myself in sort of the final selection and then off the front, and it was crazy day because I definitely didn't expect that.
What was going through your mind when you went through at Bell Lap and you're in contention to win the world title?
Well, I was in the unique situation that you're at the end of a race at the front and still not so on the limit that you can think. So up the final times, up the climbs, I was not comfortable, but pretty okay at the pace we were going in the break. So I could actually really soak it in, and I just was kind of shaking my head inside, being what the hell's going on?
The great Richie Benno, he had 8 rules of commentary, and one of those was that there is no them or us. You're meant to be neutral. And I failed that rule throughout those World Championships, Ruby. We went from commentating to barracking, and we were trying to work out what was going to be the best tactic for you to be able to win. And all of us in commentary were saying, Ruby's fast. She's a big chance here. What happened in the last couple of kilometres? Because you rolled the dice and you took a massive risk.
Yeah, well, I guess the first half of the race I spent trying to do lead-ins into the climbs and giving my bottles and gels away because it was really hard to feed due to the slippery bottles and less than ideal situations with the feed zones. So I think I was a bit underfueled and I'd gone pretty deep so many times. And when I got back on, I thought I didn't really have the legs to sprint for the win against someone like Kopecky. So why not roll the dice and try and hit them from behind? But unfortunately it didn't work out. But I still think that was the right decision in the moment given my situation.
I agree, because She was always going to be tough to beat. So you may as well roll the dice and see whether you can cause that upset and racing for the win as opposed to racing for a minor placing. Do you feel like that result 6 at the World Championships as a turning point in your career?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I think like all I can do really is like prepare the best that I can, and then come to each race with an open mind and give it what I have on the day. And yeah, I guess if you keep turning up and doing that, then eventually I think things, yeah, you get results, and yeah, never give up, and you never know what can happen.
Let's go back to the beginning. How old were you when you rode your first bike race? Where was it? And where did you finish? And would that kid believe that you'd go on to finish in the top 10 at the World Championships?
Yeah, definitely not. I was 5. I actually remember the first time my dad mentioned a track bike because he was like trying to convince me to come down to the Brunswick clinic, and we were riding just on normal sort of mountain bikes, and he was like, "Yeah, they're these bikes with no brakes and no gears," and I was just like, "That what? Like, how does that? How do you stop?" And then I raced. Oh, I went down to the Brunswick clinic when I was 5, and they do like sort of mini races each week. And in my first race, I crashed, and then they restarted the race, and then I tried again, and I crashed again in nearly exactly the same spot on the bend. So yeah, I wasn't really that excited to come back to the sport at that point, but after that, I didn't crash for a really long time, and yeah, my dad sort of convinced me to come back, and yeah, I haven't stopped since.
And so clearly resilience was built into the system for Ruby Roseman-Gannon right from the very beginning. What was the environment like down at Brunswick? Because it is renowned for having produced a lot of world-class cyclists in the World Tour right now.
Yeah, well, I started when Alan Grindle was running the clinic. So he was an Olympian and a Australian road champion, and also Grafton Varel champion. And yeah, he sort of it's always been a non-elite kind of community level grassroots sporting organization that's really about participation and having fun and sort of competition, but also like friends and yeah, community. And we have a long line of people who have volunteered their time and like really invested in us, and that also includes Alf Walker, and who unfortunately died a few years ago, and also Cam McFarlane, who's still really a big part of the club, and Dave Morgan. So yeah, we're sort of very privileged and lucky to have that sort of support from a very young age, and it's just yeah, invaluable, I think.
Oh, it is a fantastic community. Just a little digression on Alan Grindle. I think it was in around about 1984 that he was asked to go down there and just fill in for 6 weeks. I think he ended up, that 6 weeks concluded about 32 years later.
Yeah, I think I crossed paths with him for 1 year. I think his last year I was there, and then he left and Cam took over.
Yeah, he was incredible. And you mentioned the Grafton Inverell. He was the first ever winner of the Grafton to Inverell. And then you went on to win the women's edition of the Grafton to Inverell. I love that link between the two of you.
Yeah, it was pretty special to see him on the start line because I didn't expect to see him there. And he always pops up for like races here and there, like throughout my whole career, because he's not based in Melbourne. So yeah, it was really nice to see him, and yeah, it was pretty cool to also see him on the finish line after I'd won.
And what about at the Nationals? Because he won the national championships back to back. He went to the Olympics in Rome in 1960. And I know he gets a little more excited when one of the kids that he helped from Brunswick makes it onto the top step at the Nationals.
Yeah, it was really special to see him after the race. Yeah, it was, yeah, lots of people after the race, and yeah, especially Alan. Yeah, felt very proud to be part of Brunswick Cycling Club, and yeah, continue the club's legacy a bit.
There's an old cliche that success breeds success. Some of the young cyclists that you came through with at the Brunswick Cycling Club, Luke Plapp, Sarah Gigante, there's Graham Frisley, there's a bunch of others as well. What was the environment like amongst all you youngsters when you started racing with and against each other?
Yeah, I think like there was sort of yeah a bigger community than the ones that are still racing. I would say we had a lot like a yeah quite a good group of people, and we were friends, and we went away to the National Junior Track Series at the time, And yeah, that was a really fun experience. Like, I guess as a teenager as well, like going away with your friends and traveling, I guess is really exciting. But yeah, I feel like we had a really good community, and you're excited to go to training sessions and racing just to see your friends and catch up.
At what point did you go from being, yeah, it's social now and it's really competitive and I want to win? Was there a point where you made that switch and a killer instinct kicked in?
Yeah, I would say like I wasn't an incredible junior, particularly like in the before I was maybe like 12 or 13. I was yeah, I was okay, but I wasn't that good. And then yeah, over time improved a lot, and I would say like in under 15s I got pretty motivated to try and make the state teams. I feel like my whole career I've had like just that small goal ahead that I really want to achieve, and focused on that sort of, I don't know, 6 month goal or something. Yeah, and for making my first state team, I remember was like really special moment.
Pretty cool pulling that tracksuit on with the big V on it. Were your ambitions more on the track or the road at that point?
I've always done both, like ever since I started road when I was 11 or 12. And yeah, both of them, to be honest, like I liked both of them, and I liked the balance that it gave me because, yeah, just doing one could get a bit boring. But I ended up focusing more on track sort of in the end of under 17s because at the time, the Australian funding model was sort of gearing towards just supporting track riders, and the road riders were being taken out of the program. So it kind of made the decision for me because financially I couldn't really afford to do it without that sort of support.
And were the Olympics a big aspiration for you at that point?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't know exactly when it became like a goal of mine, but I would say like, yeah, obviously I always watched the Olympics as a kid, and I wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was like obsessed with the Olympics, but like I admired like sports people and like the things that they could do. I loved the Winter Olympics, funnily enough, like just the interesting sports and stuff. But yeah, I think being a part of the VIS for a while, because the sports funding is all oriented around Olympic golds, that's the goal of the organization. And I think it kind of becomes your goal as well, uh, being a part of that institution.
All right, to digress just ever so slightly, what was your favourite event at the Winter Olympics?
I really liked the artistic ice skating. Like, I really found that interesting and like just so skillful.
It's as an Australian to watch that and having no exposure, actually trying to do it, just to go down to the local roller rink. It's amazing what they can do. The jumps, the flips, the lands. It's extraordinary sport. For you, then starting to ride National Road Series races, what was it like when you first came into the adult peloton, so to speak, within Australia?
It was incredibly intimidating, I would say. Like, especially as a female junior, like most of the racing I did was with like 4 to 10 people, I would say. And yeah, it's kind of sad in some ways because I did race for so long, but like I didn't get exposure to big bunches until, yeah, basically until I started the NRS. Because yeah, we just didn't have the fields, and yeah, the biggest bunch maybe we get is 20 to 30, maybe 40 at nationals. But then yeah, felt like my bunch skills weren't that good, and then I did the NRS for the first time, I think, as a first year under 19, and I was just like really, really scared. Like I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't really feel like I had the skills to navigate the bunch. I think we had maybe like 50 or 60 people, but yeah, everyone was stronger than me, so I was on my limit. And there was a crash in like the final sort of, yeah, 300 meters, and I was just like, what is going on? But yeah, so I would say the first couple of years that I did the NRS, that was kind of my experience.
It's interesting to hear you talk about your skills, and you didn't rate your skills at that point because I watch you now as somebody on narrow roads in Europe where there's a bigger peloton, so much depth in the peloton, and I figure that that's one of your great assets.
Yeah, I think it's something like I would say I on the track, I guess you do develop some skills like positioning and stuff. But I'd say in terms of my road bunch skills, primarily I developed that through racing crits like in mixed racing, when we do have bigger field sizes, like we can have maybe 50 people. And so I really like appreciate like having done a lot of club racing with the men and like with big bunch sizes, because it's such an important skill that I feel like if you look at like Dutch racing and the women in juniors, like in under 13s, under 15s, they have massive bunches, like 70 people. So yeah, Australians really don't have that like development at a young age that the Europeans do. And I think that's why we sometimes can struggle in the bunch skills.
You wouldn't survive for long in the Netherlands if you didn't have good bike handling skills. When you were in the under 19s, you were balancing the track and doing the road as well. Did you have a coach? Was there anything beyond the group that you were riding with at Brunswick?
I didn't have a coach basically my whole career until I applied for the VIS had expressions of interest for it was actually for road female athletes, and I applied for that and then got accepted on like a training agreement, which was just like coaching and yeah, just a little bit of support kind of. So then Donna Racelinski became my coach as part of that because she was the head female VIS coach, and she like invited me on a few camps with the VIS female road riders. So yeah, I had Donna as my first coach, and I was really lucky to have her sort of as a mentor ever since.
You were in safe hands when you're with Donna Razer-Linsky. She's one of the greats of Australian cycling. Actually inducted into the Oz Cycling Hall of Fame at the beginning of 2024. How much did your training change from riding based on your own instincts by comparison to having Donna do your training program for you?
To be honest, like I didn't really train much other outside of racing because yeah, in Melbourne we're pretty lucky to have nearly a crit every night or a training session. So I would do track racing on Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, sometimes a crit, Thursday nights motor pacing at the track, and then Saturday and Sunday you could race a crit each day. So I'd sort of do some sort of combination of that and not really train. And to be honest, I really hated training. I really enjoyed like racing and yeah, just yeah, not doing the boring stuff. So Donna sort of introduced a bit more structure and normal training than just sort of getting on your bike and going full gas. And but even at that time, my training load was pretty low, I would say, because I was sort of studying at school, and that was really important to me. And yeah, I had more of a balanced sort of life. I don't think I was an elite junior by any
When,
means. Yeah.
when you say it was light, your program, can you remember roughly how many kilometres per week you were doing at that point, or how many hours per week you were committing to the bike?
Yeah, I would say like probably about 10 hours or less normally. I didn't really record it. I did look at my training peaks and I found a few files that had randomly uploaded from like 2015, which was, yeah, my under 19s first year. And I was doing like 2 hours at like 100 watts kind of thing. So yeah, now you look at the juniors, what they're doing, it's a lot more yeah, professional and yeah, a lot more volume, I would say.
How many hours per week would you do now?
Uh, about 20 to 25.
Going back to when you were doing 10 hours, you spoke about school was really important to you. Was that at that point you still saw cycling as a hobby and a career path because you did incredibly well at school? Was that more your focus? Was the academics?
Yeah, well, part of it was like speaking to a lot of professional women at the time or women who are trying to go professional. Like it was so hard to sort of financially make it work because it wasn't really supported by, yeah, people were being paid like 5,000 euro a year or less. And it's a big move for Australian riders to move overseas, let alone with like no financial support or very little. So yeah, I really felt like if I wanted to do the sport, I was going to have to study pretty hard and get a well paying enough job that I could keep this expensive hobby on the side. So yeah, that was definitely a motivating factor for me to like pursue academic studies.
And what did you study at university?
I did a Bachelor of Science majoring in neuroscience.
And you finished your degree?
Yeah, I finished in 2021, and then the following year I went professional, so it worked out quite well timing wise.
That's worked out really well. So, how much did your cycling change when you went from studying and cycling part time to being a full time cyclist?
Yeah, a fair bit. Like when I was, yeah, for a while I tried to work, study, and ride, and it was just, yeah, it's unfeasible really to train at the level that you need to train at now to become professional or I found that I couldn't improve really enough. At the time I was trying to go onto the track program, but like I was so stressed trying to manage all those things. So I ended up doing my degree part-time, like over 5 years rather than three, and that helped a lot. And then when I moved to Adelaide for the track program, I had some financial assistance from that program, and that really helped as well. And yeah, when I finally finished my degree and I could focus on cycling full time, I found, yeah, mentally I was a lot happier and healthier. And then, yeah, also I could train a lot harder because I wasn't sort of trying to divide my energy between doing really well in my studies and then also trying to do my training really well.
What would your advice be to a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old who's just finished secondary school in terms of juggling university studies or some sort of other form of education along with their cycling?
Look, I think it's really challenging because if you look at the sport and the direction it's going, they're taking people on younger and younger, and it's harder and harder to get in when you're like the age went in at 21 or 22. Like it's becoming even younger and younger. So I don't know if I would have made the same choice that I made if I was starting now. But one thing that I think is really, really important is not to put all your eggs in one basket and like in just cycling, because not only for a career perspective, but I guess more so to do with your identity and sense of self and feeling of competency, I would say, within yourself, to have something else outside of cycling that you know that you can do, or that is hard and that you've worked on and you can go back to after cycling. Because for me, one thing that I feel incredibly lucky about is that cycling is something that I choose to do, not that I have to do, because I know that I can go back, and I'm really excited to do more study and have another career after this. So every time like I get on my bike, it's like a choice, not doesn't feel like I have to. And I see some people that don't have that same sort of, yeah, competency in another area. So cycling is what they feel like they only have. And it doesn't necessarily have to be academic studies, but I think you need something, yeah, to really for your sense of self and to know that you're not just a cyclist.
We hear that from a lot of sports psychologists as well. Ben Crow, who's done a lot of work with some of Australia's great athletes like Ash Barty and the Richmond Football Club, he talks about I am enough, and then that helps an athlete get through a period where they're not getting great results. That it's not their identity, their self worth isn't based on am I winning or am I losing. So clearly for you, that's been a big contributing factor to get through some lean spots in your career where you can't be winning all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And yeah, I guess it is also hard because like I said, the sport is becoming sort of increasingly professionalized at a younger age. So I can see like the argument to go in a lot earlier, but also I see the potential that you can also get burnt out because I see a lot of people who really, really want to go to the professional ranks and they just want to get that first contract. And what I would say is like, yeah, that was also how I felt, like trying to get into like get my first contract, but at the same time, it doesn't end there. Like that's not, you don't just finish there and then it's all okay. Then there's pressure to perform, and then you've got to sign your next contract, and there's like performance requirements. So like the pressure and that sort of stress never ends, and there's always sort of performance demands and next sort of KPIs or yeah, performance indicators that you've got to hit. So you've got to find a way to manage that and really see the long-term picture of like really at the end of the day what I find most satisfying more than any results is like overcoming my own sort of inner conflicts and struggles and doing my best and knowing that I've done my best and that I can sort of, yeah, be happy with and be content.
So there's going to be a whole bunch of athletes in this Pro Velo Super League that don't win because there's only one that can win and get their Stagiaire chance with your team. So what's your advice to them to overcome those hurdles of, I wanted to win it, but I finished fifth or I finished seventh and I've still got this dream?
Yeah, well, when I started the NRS, my first race, one of my first races, I spent most of the race in the convoy with Kendall Hodges at the time, and she actually taught me how to ride the convoy, which was a very useful skill because I'd come from races where like there was no convoy, and so if you were out the back, you were gone. But you can like make your way back when you have a convoy. And I would say like yeah, I spent quite a few years getting dropped and like finishing close to last, not winning. And I think like if you truly love the sport and you just keep chipping away at it and you look at it from a perspective of not comparing yourself to others, but looking at your strengths and weaknesses and what you can work on and yeah, doing your best every day to be the best athlete you can, then okay, maybe you make it, maybe you don't, but I think it's a much more satisfying way to go about yeah, an elite athlete career than to be so focused on the result in itself because a lot of that you can't control. And yeah, I guess that's how I come to terms with like, yeah, feeling pressure to get us like a and I understand it can be like a lot of pressure that you know that if you win you can get this like stage yeah, but there's always another opportunity and I think yeah, all you can do is your best. So that's what you got to focus on and take a lot of pleasure in that.
You've reminded me of a great quote from Andre Agassi, and it says simply, you cannot control the outcome, but you can control the output.
Yeah, totally true.
So, for what about the athlete who does win this series and they get the opportunity to have a Stagiaire chance with your squad, with the Liverpool, the Jayco team? What's your advice to them? Because it can be daunting going into one of the world's biggest teams, certainly Australia's biggest team.
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, well, it is a big step up, I would say. Like it's different, definitely different kinds of racing. And I would say anyone who's wanting to race in Europe should be really focusing on like trying to expose themselves to big bunches as much as possible. And yeah, navigating their way through bunches rather than just using their legs because yeah, you can't really get away with that as much. But specifically for that person, I would say yeah, try and take the pressure off yourself. It will be a challenge, and I think like the team knows that it will be a challenge for anyone going over there, and they don't just take into account your performance. I think they take into account your mindset, how you go about things. Yeah, like your ability to work as a teammate, and yeah, how you fit into a team, and yeah, how you apply yourself in challenging situations because this is something that can be developed over time. So it's not like, yeah, one stage year period defines your career.
And there's a whole bunch of ways you can add value to the team without winning. And that's really important because there's so many people that make it to the world tour because they have been winners, but then they've got to change their role and play the support role like you did at the start of the World Championships this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like it is a really weird sport because it is a team sport, but it's also an individual sport. Like there is that ongoing tension. And I personally like I like both sides of things. I really like contributing to the team goal and yeah, giving my all for the team. There's something extremely satisfying about yeah, sacrificing your own race because you know it's the best choice for the team. But at the same time, I think a lot of people in the sport because they are inherently competitive and really love the thrill of winning and going for the win. So I personally like the balance of that combination of the team and the individual.
As a parent, one of the reasons you want your kids to play sport is to build resilience. And you've touched on that already with crashing in your first outing down at the Brunswick Velodrome. This year, you had a really tough start to the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift and then bounced back to go on to finish in the top 10 at the World Championships. What's the key factors that you actually apply to yourself to be able to bounce back from those challenging moments?
Yeah, I guess this sport does bring a lot of challenges. Like yeah, it's inevitable that at some point you'll run into a crash or yeah, some sort of challenge, injury. And I guess I think partly like not being like an incredibly successful junior at a young age was beneficial because I didn't sort of come with it yeah, I never expected that everything would sort of come easily. And then also in my under 19 years and started seniors, like I wasn't really good. So there were many points where I considered stopping, and I didn't necessarily enjoy it that whole period. But I guess what it taught me every time I did decide to go again and like give it another shot and yeah, commit, and was it taught me resilience and yeah, never giving up, I think, is one big one. Like in any race, like never give up is, yeah, it's a mentality that Tim Decker is a really big fan of. And I totally agree with it because I think, yeah, if you just never give up, you never know what can happen. So, yeah.
Well, we never know what's going to happen with the next phase of your career. It is definitely looking super, super bright. Before we touch on your ambitions for the future, a question for you on coaching. What is your favourite training session and what's your least favourite?
Yeah. Favorite? I'm not sure. I used to say like 3 by 20 minutes, and I still do enjoy that session. But I don't know. I don't really have a favorite session, I would say, at the moment. But my least favorite is probably like the start of a VO2 block, because I think, yeah, when you haven't done it for a while and you're building back into that, like the first few weeks of that is pretty horrific. But then by the end of it, you feel pretty good. So
And how about the gym? Did you spend much time in the gym?
yeah, I do. I do try and maintain gym like throughout the off season, then also through the season. This year I couldn't because I had like a crash in the classics where I had a knee injury from. But yeah, I think it's really important. Like, even if you're not necessarily a sprinter or a track rider, I think gym can be really good for injury prevention and also for power. So, yeah, personally, it's something that I really prioritize.
And using all that power, looking to the future, what are your ambitions for the remainder of your career?
I think I really want to give the classics, well, of course, the Australian summer again. Is always like, yeah, I'm always motivated to train for that. But I think the classics is something that, yeah, I've been close a few times and I would love to try and get on a podium. A big dream would be a Tour de France stage, but yeah, that's quite a lofty goal. But yeah, just generally enjoying the sport, and yeah, I'm excited for the next few years.
And we're excited to watch it. Ruby Roseman-Gannon, thanks for joining us on the Road to the World Tour.
Thanks so much for having me.